ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Track Limits podcast team. We've got some interesting catching up to do since our last episode 2 days ago. A lot has happened in the F1 driver market. It's quite the silly season that has started, so stay tuned for a Formula 1 week roundup on all things driver related. Let's take it away, Phil.
Well, good afternoon or good morning, whenever you're listening. Doesn't really matter. Anyway, Sebastian Vettel's gone. We had a short episode with you the other day just to talk about what we think that Sebastian Vettel's going to be doing with his career. And we've heard who's replaced him. So he's going to be replaced with Carlos Sainz, who's signed a 2-year deal with the Scuderia. We did have some thoughts down about who might replace him. We had Sainz up there with Ricciardo as the two main competitors to take the seat, but Sainz has won through on that contract, and Ricciardo has signed with McLaren to take Sainz's place. So, Dom, I'm going to go to you first. Your thoughts on whether this is a good career move for Carlos Sainz?
Well, any move to a big three team is a good move for any driver. I do think he's ready to take the battle to Leclerc, but he is older. He does have more experience in F1, but will he play second fiddle? I mean, he's very calm and collected. He's not known for having big outbursts like even Seb or sometimes like Danny Rick himself. So I think he's probably the best composed to go up against Leclerc for next year. Of course, it's a good career move. I mean, Josh said in the last podcast, if you get signed for Ferrari, that is the dream. Everyone's goal is to end up at one of the big three. My only concern is that he, as I said before, he's not had a firm footing in any team that he's been in yet. He's not had more than one season except for Toro Rosso, and that was his, rookie year. Him as a driver, he's more than capable. Let's hope the rest of him as a package for Ferrari can pull it all together, and then that is going to be a star team for next year.
Do we think he'll be able to match Leclerc? Anyone want to weigh in on that?
I think he can. I think he can. We don't want to hear that. Watching F1, and we don't want to hear this traditional radio signal. Hello, Carlos. Charles is quicker than you. You need to let him by. I don't want to hear that. But I don't think it will be long. Probably maybe the third race in.
Yeah, I think it's definitely interesting. I think what's happened with this move for signing Carlos is it seems like there's been a changing of the guard in Ferrari's approach to team management. So we looked at last year, 2019, with Vettel and Leclerc, and from the outset they said Vettel's the number one driver. Every decision will be to support Vettel in his championship fight, and we saw that just didn't happen. That didn't work, and I feel like the move towards Sainz is sort of an accepting of that fact, and they're sort of now going to say, well, it's not going to be a case of Leclerc is faster than you. I think it's just a case of trying to manage the relationships and then letting them deliver on track, and they're sensible enough. I feel Leclerc is sensible enough, and I think Sainz is sensible enough to avoid those sort of issues.
I think it's important as well. I mean, I don't know if we're going to get a season this year, but this season it looked as though the Ferrari car probably wasn't one that was going to be able to challenge for the championship, judged on pre-season testing. I think they've got a good opportunity. Obviously, that this car is continuing into 2021 when Carlos Sainz is going to be going to the team. So development opportunities are going to be more limited. So they may be facing a 2021 season where they won't be able to challenge for the championship as well, which they might be able to use for their opportunity, and they might be able to allow that driver pairing to just play out and see what happens.
And what's more, Sainz has proven, particularly last year, obviously we're going off last year's performances, that he was able to work very well in a team. He's a team player, and I think the character of Carlos definitely seems more geared towards building up a team together rather than trying to sort of break down the walls of his opponent, his teammate. So I think Ferrari have seen that clearly, and they think that that's probably the right sort of material that they want going into a rule change that will come in 2022. And 2021 is that year to build on that, as you say.
Definitely. Right. So looking at perhaps some other teams on the grid, and Josh, you were mentioning about the changing of the guard for Ferrari and perhaps them acknowledging that. I've got down in my notes here that maybe perhaps they've taken a look and a little bit of inspiration from Red Bull and the fact that the team is being centered around Max Verstappen, this young and upcoming driver, much like Charles Leclerc, and they've brought on Alex Albon, another young driver. Do you think they're trying to maybe have a go and see if that works? Because it goes against their history of taking established race winners and champions.
Absolutely. You look at the development of that Verstappen-Albon relationship, and certainly towards the end of last year, if Verstappen wasn't able to maximize performance, you did have the confidence that Albon would be able to take a decent result, and he would have done in Brazil. And I feel potentially Ferrari have looked at a lot of their, because they've had the fastest car in 2017 and 2018, and it was their driver lineup that let them down. They could have won that Constructors' Championship had they had two drivers that if one didn't deliver, the other one did. So I think that's definitely a big concern that they've had over these last couple of years, and I think they've probably taken. I mean, Binotto's seen that clearly, and he has taken, the step towards having two very competitive drivers, but not necessarily against each other.
Definitely. So with obviously Vettel well, we don't know where Vettel's gone. Sorry, Vettel's gone. We know he's out of Ferrari. We don't know where he's going to end up. We know that Daniel Ricciardo has decided to take Carlos Sainz's empty seat at McLaren to join them for 2021, and I think that could be quite an inspired move. And the reason I think that is because we know, given the last couple of seasons, that McLaren are definitely on the up. Andreas Seidel is really making rapid progress with that team. They are also switching to the Mercedes engine in 2021. So we've got a team with forward momentum. We've got a rock solid power unit. Is Daniel Ricciardo making another plunge that might see him in a car capable of delivering a championship, do you think, come 2022?
Yep, I think it's a good move. Before we even get to the McLaren decision, he was, we get the impression that he was frustrated with Renault last year. They promised him all these wonderful things at a moment in his career where he was a bit vulnerable at Red Bull. He needed a change. I think we'd all agree that. But Renault just couldn't give him that car underneath him to bring his smile back. And McLaren is the perfect opportunity. Even if McLaren continue on what they did last year and they finish in the same position, it's still better than what the Renault was last year. And Ricciardo is a top class driver. He's probably as good as say Lewis and Max and those kind of guys. So it's perfect. He and Lando get on very well. He does have a lot of charisma about him as a person as well, as a personality. So that could pay dividends. And then with McLaren moving to Mercedes power, if they continue with the packaging that they've done on that car from last year and the year before with the Renault engine, moving to Mercedes power could be a game changer.
The only thing I'm thinking of is for Ricciardo is that he went to Renault for something different and just to basically get out the way of Red Bull's obsession with Max because he felt he was being undervalued and everything else. So Renault to McLaren probably isn't what he had in mind when he left, because I imagine he went to Renault with the idea of, okay, take 2 years at Renault, they build up, and then Red Bull, probably not Red Bull, but Ferrari or Mercedes might see you're a great driver again, and then they pick you up once Vettel retires or Hamilton retires. So Renault to McLaren is kind of going sideways for me. It's not exactly an improvement for Ricciardo. Yes, McLaren are that little bit better than Renault, but to jump ship very quickly after joining a midfield team to another midfield team, I think that just sets the wrong precedent for him, and I'm wondering if he's going to continue doing this for a while, if just whenever a contract comes up that he likes the look of, he'll go there.
I do feel a little bit sorry for him in that I think he's got the talent definitely to win a championship. I wouldn't dispute that. I feel like a lot of his career has just been at the wrong place in the wrong time. He arrives at Red Bull the year after they finish 4 years of dominance, and then they never quite delivered that car. Was able to take it to Mercedes. It could get the odd win, and he's done 7 of them, managed 7 wins. And then he thought, yeah, there might be something with Renault, and I wonder whether he says he thought that he had faith in Renault and that they might be able to deliver a car. But then there's always that: did he run from a battle with Max Verstappen? I don't think you're ever quite gonna know. I think it's up to you to draw your own conclusions. But yeah, he's been unlucky. I think he's been very unlucky not to be signed up by Ferrari or Mercedes, given his performances in the last 5 years.
I think from the time that Ricciardo's spent at Renault, he's probably seen a lot more than what we have seen in terms of how the team is developing. I mean, we saw at testing, the car did look very different. So it seemed like they had made changes, but maybe he drove it in testing and thought, this isn't the sort of progress I expected from the second year with the team. And he probably lost faith at that point and started looking further afield. It certainly seems to me like Renault is quite a volatile place to be. You look at the way that the team is run and the number of drivers that have been in that team since they came back to the sport. It definitely doesn't seem like you're safe there. So maybe he thought that he was in a position where his stock was still high, but he had an issue potentially with the management there, and he didn't have that confidence that he did initially. And looking at McLaren, you have to consider as well that we're moving towards a budget cap in F1. And if you look at the relative budgets of every team, teams like Renault have been spending enormous amounts of money and not delivering. Mercedes has spent a lot of money and delivered. But McLaren have been spending a similar amount to what this budget cap is going to be. So you'd have to say their performance relative to how much they spend is probably pound for pound some of the strongest on the grid. So he might be thinking long term. McLaren are prepared for, or better prepared, I should say, for dealing with a budget cap when it comes in and not having to divert a huge amount of resource from one area to another. And that could put them in a very good place coming into the new regulations. So he might be banking on that sort of approach rather than sort of seeing it as a sideways step. He's seeing sideways for now, but potentially a couple of steps forward in the years to come and playing that longer game.
Be good to see him back at the front in a McLaren. Be good to see both of them back at the front, definitely. So with that move, that then leaves, this is the nature of silly season, that then leaves a seat free at Renault that we currently don't know what's happening with. So there's a number of rumours going around. Obviously, we've got Vettel free. We've got Hulkenberg looking to make his way back into Formula One. Zhu, he's a young driver in the Renault setup. Fernando Alonso never seems far away from trying to make some sort of miraculous comeback. So what do we think?
I think
What's most likely?
I can rule out Zhu and Hulkenberg straight away. Hulkenberg was ousted by Renault. I don't think he's going to go back to Renault. I think that just doesn't make much sense from a personal point of view. Yes, he obviously wants to get back into F1, but I wouldn't have the faith in... If that happened to me, I wouldn't have the faith in the bosses and the team that they actually care. I know in F1 it's a cutthroat industry, as all motorsport is, but you need that sort of reassurance.
Respect for yourself.
Yeah, the reassurance that Renault are going to be in it with you rather than just be in it for themselves, which if Hulkenberg goes back, I don't think he'll have that. And then Zhu, they've got Ocon, who's a young driver who has only had 2 years in F1 or 3.
Dom is your expert.
Anyway, but he's had...
It's
2.5.
2.5, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, you can't have a driver who's only had 2.5 years in F1 and then someone who's had none. I think that's a recipe for disaster in terms of car development. So you can rule those two out, I think, straight away. But anyone else, I think it's anyone's guess, really.
Should we do a prediction and a hope? I feel like I always enjoy a
Go
prediction
on
and a
then.
hope. So, prediction and a hope then, Chris. Prediction: who will be in that Renault seat?
That's a tricky one. I I predict that it will be Alonso.
I'll buy you a beer if that's true.
And I hope it's Vettel. I hope Vettel sticks around. It makes no sense that he'd go to Renault, but I hope he sticks around.
I'm gonna go to Josh. Prediction and hope.
I was hoping you'd give me a bit more time to think about that one.
Nope, I'm gonna throw you in at the deep end.
Well, my prediction is going to be Vettel on the basis that he has a very good relationship with Renault. He won all his world championships powered by Renault. He's probably on a massive amount of money, not that that matters, but he'll take it. And my hope is that Alonso gets it, because I'd love to see Alonso back in F1, just to see him against Ocon as well. I think I said before, having Alonso back in an F1 team would be just an amazing measure of junior talent.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Dom, prediction and hope.
You've put me on the spot. I have no idea. My hope is that we may get someone else from across the floor. Maybe one of the Haas camp coming over to partner alongside Ocon. That's my hope. I don't really have a prediction. Everything is so in the air. I'm I'm quite stumped. So I think I'd have to pass on the prediction. But on the point you made about Hulkenberg, he left on, he was ousted from it. I would love to see Hulkenberg come back in a team that's not powered by a Renault engine, just to see the look on Cyril's face.
Cyril's a miserable, isn't he? He's just. I hate Cyril because he thinks he's all that,
Yeah,
and he just needs to be
he's
taken
rubbed
down.
many drivers the wrong way.
I enjoy watching. Well, I don't enjoy watching him at all. I watch him on Drive to Survive, and you just see him trying to make jokes, and he's just not funny. He just comes across as being a ruthless cutthroat.
Yeah, who was trying to talk it large to Christian Horner for taking Ricciardo,
Yeah,
and then Horner just said, what was it you said in reply?
I don't know, or belittling a driver or anything. I don't think he's
Oh yeah,
a fantastic manager.
we're not buying your engine, so it doesn't matter. What you can do with all that
Yeah.
less money, something like that.
That is a very a Christian Horner thing to say.
Yeah.
Beeple definitely landed on his feet with that Renault job, because he was at Caterham beforehand, which wasn't as successful. And
I don't think he's made progress that he should have.
yeah,
Sorry.
No,
I
he
think
hasn't.
a lot of heads have rolled apart from his at Renault. Maybe he's got to make progress this year, and that's his final chance. We don't know. I mean, he's definitely passionate about racing. You can't say he isn't, but definitely his management style doesn't seem to bring the best out of his drivers or the team from the
He
outside.
leaves a lot to be desired, really. It does leave a lot to be desired.
It's a bit uninspiring, I think.
Anyway, I'm going to predict and hope for this Renault seat. This is an outlandish one. I hope that Sergio Perez lands the drive alongside Ocon so that they can resume their feud and we can have fireworks. And I'm going to predict that it's Nico Hulkenberg. He strikes me as the sort of person that just would come crawling back. I'm sorry to say, but I don't think, as much as he would want to be self-respecting and not take that opportunity, I do think that you're an F1 driver, you need to take an F1 drive, and that's the drive that's going to be available. And if they take him back, I think he'd go. So I'll say that I predict Hulkenberg will be back. I'd like to see Sergio Perez next to Ocon again.
I just want to jump in here a bit, Phil. In terms of driver signings, I'm pretty sure Perez has already signed for beyond 2020
Maybe.
with Force India.
Maybe. He probably
I
has.
saw an Instagram post come out, and the only people that have been confirmed are, well, obviously the entire McLaren camp, the entire Ferrari camp, Max Verstappen, and Sergio Perez. This is as of today lunchtime on the F1 Instagram page.
Oh, okay.
So that may change your hopes a little bit.
It's a hope. So
yeah. Well, anything is possible. He could decide, partway through next year, well, he's going to take his Mexican sponsorship elsewhere.
He might. I fancy driving into Ocon a couple of times again.
I think with Hulkenberg, it will be whoever goes to, assuming a driver from the current grid goes to Renault, he'll just fill that spot. I think he'll just slip in, or whoever pick up the pieces, whoever goes to Renault.
I would like to change my prediction.
Ooh.
Go on then. I'll allow one change.
Well, I did say in our previous episode that Vettel is going to retire from F1, and just thinking about it then, it is a huge downgrade from Ferrari to Renault, and I don't think he's about that life, to be honest. He's done everything he wants to do in Formula One, so to take that sort of step just to remain in F1, I don't think is strong enough for him. So my prediction is they don't sign Hulkenberg, but they go with Guan Yu Zhou, because it's a huge market for Renault, particularly at the moment. They've had a huge hit on sales. It might be a decision above a beat ball saying we need to get a Chinese driver in F1 and we need to start selling cars in China. And you could just imagine him plastered across every sponsorship board in China, and that would be a big thing for Renault as a company. If they're in F1 for one reason, it's to sell road cars.
I could see that happening, indeed.
I feel sorry for the people of China being sold a fleet of Renaults. But that's besides the point.
Well, let's dive into this potential Alonso rumor that came out earlier today.
Go on then.
What do you guys think about that? I saw that come out today, and what hit me, not the fact that he was potentially linked to coming back, was that Liberty would potentially foot the bill. That's just crazy.
Are you serious?
Yeah, there's a rumour come out today that, what was it, Liberty Media might pay some of his salary to bring him back to Renault.
That's atrocious. You can't have... It's bad enough that the F1 pay Ferrari, or the FIA pay Ferrari, whichever one it is. But you can't have them pay a driver to come back. No.
I find it funny because it's almost like they've just introduced a budget cap to stop teams spending money, and they're willing to just start giving a bit of cash to a team. Not that the driver salary counts as in the budget cap, but still, it's just a bit going back on their new rules. And also, it's just blatant favouritism.
Yeah.
If he comes in, he has to win, surely. There must be something in his contract.
I understand.
Well, everyone's going to be slowing down behind him, so Alonso's going to be pootling around thinking he's going quick, and everyone else is just stuck behind.
Safety car.
PK puts it in a wall.
I saw the article come out on Facebook earlier, and I was just reading the general comments that came out, and everyone is like, "Oh yes, Alonso coming back will be great for the sport," and this, and I was like, but don't just circle straight past that Liberty footing the bill thing, because that's highly political.
It's just, yeah.
That almost, to me, that seems like there's hidden agendas going on, which there shouldn't be in motorsport.
I think the main reason they're probably willing to foot that bill, and I might be making this up completely, but Fernando Alonso back on the F1 grid is what a lot of people want to see. And if they're willing to pay for some of that to bring him back, then it is in their interest, because they are bringing Formula One as a sport to the world. They want to make it as for the people as it can be, and that's, I suppose, what they're willing to do. But I still don't think it's correct.
I agree. With that same argument, that means that there's nothing stopping, say, another team from saying, "Hey, Nico Rosberg, do you fancy coming back and driving for a year with us? You've got a championship up against the blessed man, which is Lewis Hamilton."
I don't think he's got the same aura though around him, and the same following,
No.
and the same magnitude.
But
He's Fernando Alonso,
I think
you know.
the point stands. Why not just bring Damon Hill back? Or
Mika Hakkinen hasn't
Yeah.
retired.
Yeah.
He's still on sabbatical.
bring back Mika
Sebastian.
Hakkinen.
True.
Just have an F1 Legends team.
Yeah, it opens so many couldn't you doors, and it's not even worth thinking about. It's probably a load of rubbish, but
It better be.
if it turns out to be true, then I shall be having serious words with Chase Carey.
Find him.
Anyway, I, I don't suppose anyone actually knows what's going on with the current situation regarding Formula One, and is it going to happen this year?
Well, as of this, a couple hours ago, was it Silverstone was confirmed to do 2 races this year. So while this year may not, it's still up in the air as to whether it happens at all. It's good to see they're planning to have as many races as possible.
Definitely. I'm very conflicted about the whole situation, because at the end of the day, sport is surplus to human requirement. We don't need it. We don't need it to survive. And obviously, the main thing is everybody's healthy and safe and well. But at the same time, I'm really missing Formula One big time, and I would really like to have it back now, because I'm watching like races from 1984 on F1 TV just to hear some people discussing Formula One, and it's not the same. It's part of my life, my routine. It's every 2 weeks on a Sunday, sit down and just watch and listen, and I miss it.
I think we're all the same. We all feel like that.
Yeah, with all kinds of motorsport. I think F1 obviously one the closest for many of us, but it's a difficult one to judge because they're talking about doing it with no fans. So how do you have a Formula One race without any fans? It just becomes a low level kart race with expensive cars.
I mean, it's got the global following to have a TV viewing, but I understand the fans are what people go to watch sport, to go and watch it live. The fact that it's on TV is to make money, really, and people want to watch it and they can't make it there. But of all the Formula One races I've watched 102, and I know that because Carlos Sainz has started 102, and I started watching at the start of 2015. So I've watched 102, but I've been to one. So TV is important, just like the fans are important, but it doesn't need the fans at the track to happen. People will still be interested and people still watch.
That's a very good point.
But, I'm sure it'll be back.
It'll be back in some description.
Yeah. And in the meantime, you can enjoy all kinds of sim racing. There's races on R Factor 2. There's races on the Codemasters Formula 1 game. There's just about as much sim racing as can possibly be talked about to fill the gap, but it's just not quite the same.
Even further to that, you've got lots of celebrities not even related to motorsport. I mean, Sergio Aguero has got a play seat delivered to him, and he's featured on 2, I think, F1 esports races now. Petter Solberg has done a couple as well. He's also done a Legends race on esports. So yeah, it's interesting to see all these guys coming back into the same arena. It's almost like a glorified race of champions.
Yeah, I think it's
online.
It's done a lot of exposure for F1 and motorsport in general, having all these footballers and golfists, and wasn't there a tennis player once as well? There's all sorts of people. A cricketer, Ben Stokes. It's bringing everyone outside of the world of motorsport to just have a little bit of spotlight on not what it is, but what it's like with the races and everything.
It's remarkable because motorsport is, and specifically gaming and sim racing, is most, I'd say, close to real life. So what I mean by that is, I can sit in my lounge and have a steering wheel and pedals, and I can drive a car. Whereas if I'm playing FIFA, I don't kick a ball in a net in my living room. It's the most realistic form of gaming, I would argue, and therefore it's the most useful sport to apply to esports. But it's providing me with some sort of
Outlet.
motorsport feel, but not to the extent that I need.
Yeah, I would very much like to jump back in a kart. In a real one.
Oh yes.
Anyway, I think what we're doing is rambling now.
Should we have a quick recap? So obviously you've heard the news now. It's not secret anymore. Sainz is going to replace Vettel at Ferrari. Ricciardo is going to replace Sainz at McLaren. And Vettel in essence now is either looking for a drive or gonna, do something else. And you've got the entire rest of the grid not signed for next year. So there's lots of musical chairs going on. Giovinazzi and other Ferrari youth drivers, they've obviously missed out, but what does that mean going forward? Is Giovinazzi going to stay? Will it be time for, Kimi to actually no, is Kimi hasn't signed yet, has he?
Kimi signed up for this year, but this year hasn't started yet, so I'm a little bit confused as to what that means with driver contracts, but I'm sure that
everything's quite up in the air as well, also from a legality point of view.
Because are contracts done on number of races, or are they done on time?
I assume that you sign to drive for a team in a Formula One year, because a season takes place in a year. It's not like football where it goes, August to August or whatever. Yeah. It's in a year, so you sign to drive for a team for that year.
The 2020-2021 season.
Yeah, so I don't assume that this season will go into next year. If it does, who knows what that means. It's probably going to be this season, next season, rather than, I don't know. It's a difficult one, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, if we come to it. Anyway, I think we could probably draw to a close on this one. We could sit here and talk for hours about ifs and buts and what might happen and what I want and what's best for the world, but we'll just bore you. So, Josh.
All I want to say is that only F1 could produce such excitement during a pandemic. That there's no sport going on, but this has been the most exciting week in F1 for a very long time, and nothing's happened. There's been no racing at all. I don't think you couldn't see any other sort of sport do that. I don't think.
No, I've been back into office this week from Wednesday, and there are people that I work with who are not even F1 fans, and they're talking about it. So that just goes to show,
It's a great sport.
One other thing I want to say before we end off this episode is that today, 15th of May, is Chris's birthday. So join us in wishing Chris a happy birthday, everyone.
Happy birthday, Chris.
Oh, thank you, chaps.
Happy birthday, Chris.
That means a lot.
And I think that is good to cap off a very intense and exciting week.
Definitely. Right, stay safe, stay at home, or listen to the government. And we'll see you soon.
See you soon. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe and share. We love to hear your feedback, and stay tuned for the next episode.